Now back to the Brian Zimmerman Show. Here's Brian.
And welcome back to another episode of the Brian Zimmerman Show, where I share personal tell-all stories and revelations of my good and bad experiences in sales, music, marketing, and in radio. Want to invite a special guest on today, who is the founder and master headhunter of Rob Barnett Media. We also share some musical and radio background as well. It's my pleasure to welcome Rob Barnett to the show. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you, sir. It's good to see you.
Always a pleasure. So you and I have both worked in radio, and we also have some musical, I guess we could say we're both music enthusiasts or melomaniacs. Is that safe to say? I mean, I think we have a pretty good musical background. I think obviously you got a record collection there in the background. How many records do you have, by the way?
A lot.
Probably more than I do. Probably more than I do. I mean, I have a lot too, but I stopped collecting.
The approximate number is a lot.
Yeah. CDs, vinyl, cassettes.
All of that. Yes.
All the above.
Yeah.
And are you a musician as well?
I play drums.
You're a drummer.
Yeah.
Because I was going to say you look like a guitar player.
Never had the smarts for it, but I like your collection.
Yeah. What about a band? You've been in bands?
I was, yeah, all throughout high school, a little bit into college. When I realized I loved it and wanted to do it as much as I could, I also realized I wasn't good enough to go pro. So that's when I slipped into rock radio as the next best thing.
Yeah. What about favorite bands, favorite artists?
Oh, God. I mean, it's always hard to make a list. I've always joked about, that concept of a top 5, a top 10. It's very hard, but if forced to answer the question, I usually start with Bob Dylan, and then I move to Rolling Stones, Beatles, Bruce Springsteen, and hundreds more. But certainly from the songwriter perspective, and but I also had a big love for punk and went in that direction for quite a while.
So a wide range, is that safe to say?
That is safe to say, yeah.
What about your first concert? Remember your first concert?
I usually win that game. Here it is. The year is 1967. My mom and dad take me to Forest Hills Stadium in New York to see the headliner, the Monkees, and the opening act, Jimi Hendrix. He only opened 4 shows for the Monkees till the promoter realized that was a grave mistake. And I was 7 years old seeing my first concert in 1967.
I think I was 7 or 8 years old. My first concert was back, well, I don't want to age myself, but back in the 80s, it was Les Paul at Rutgers.
Wow. What a great one.
With my grandfather and my uncle. And I'm not sure if it was indoors or outdoors, but I remember we had to wait so long. Maybe we got there early. But I think he had also a guitar player by the name of Joe Piccarelli.
That's right.
With him on stage there. Don't remember a lot of it, but I remember waiting a long time. It was at Rutgers. And my grandfather was a big country guy, music. He was a guitar player as well. So I inherited the guitar from him. The musical side of things for me was inheriting it from my parents. My mother was the big Beatles fan. And my father was into the, Zeppelin and the Who and Black Sabbath and those sort of things. So I kind of got bitten by the British bug, the British invasion bug at that early age. And so it's pretty wild.
It's a great first one. I saw Les Paul when he was playing the regular club dates in New York. He was well on to, must have been in his mid to late 80s. And the thing that blew me away about going to see him was that after the show was over and the people would leave the club, Les Paul would be sitting out in the bar area, patiently ready, willing, and able to meet every single fan that
Yeah.
wanted to shake his hand, get an autograph, ask him a goofy question about guitar, take a selfie, and he did not go home until the last person left. It was a beautiful thing to witness.
Did you ever go to his museum? I think it's in
No,
Madison. Yeah, I like to go there. He's got all that original, the recordings and the recording machines, all that stuff from the 50s and 60s,
his inventions.
the inventions. I remember my father playing, the Who's Next album. And from that, when I was in diapers, basically, and forever, that was forever me. It changed me. From that point on, I became an instant. It stuck. I still listen to it today. So, but speaking of records, I want to talk about your first job at CBS Records while you're at Boston University. Tell me about your experience there.
Well, the job title was New England College Promo Rep for CBS Records, which back then included Columbia and Epic Records. And I'd get in my car and drive literally all over New England to all of the college stations with my free promotional copies of the albums that we wanted to try to get airplay on. And it was an incredible experience. I got to work with so many artists and met so many radio people as my first entry into the music business.
Now, were you also a DJ on college radio? Did you ever do it on air?
I was the exact same chair and microphone that Howard Stern was on a bunch of years before me, a radio station called WTBU, which was the campus radio station, still is, at Boston University.
Because you have the radio voice. So that's why I asked.
I was a disc jockey there and co-music director with the man who to this day is still my best friend, Mike Isabella. That's how we got our radio start.
Any memorable radio stories? I'm sure there's a ton of radio stories you can think of. What is one of the best ones?
Oh my God. I started in 78 and my first run in radio went from 78 to about 88. So there were a lot of stories there. And then I went to MTV and VH1 for a long time after that. Right. That was all throughout from the late 80s all throughout to about 2000. Then I got back to radio, and in 04, 05, 06, I had the stupid title called President of CBS Radio. But Howard Stern quit on my watch, and that's something that would take a lot longer than a 15-minute podcast to go through.
We have all day, Rob.
Yeah.
What about meeting any radio icons? Scott Muni? Did you meet Scott Muni?
I did meet Scott Muni in a toilet when I was 11 years old. My father took me into WNEW AM because my dad was friends with William B. Williams, who was a legendary New York disc jockey and famously the guy who named Frank Sinatra the chairman of the board. And so one day we went into the radio station. I was 11. My dad was there to see Willie. I was so nervous. I went to the bathroom, and there I am at the urinal. And the legend, Scott Muni, walks in at the next urinal, looks at this little kid next to me, goes, "Hey, kid." That's how I met Scott Muni.
Scott Muni, NEW, New York. That's the golden voice of radio, I always call him. I remember listening to him back in the day, and just pure, radio gold, right?
One of the greatest broadcasters of all time.
What about Dave Herman or Pete Fornatel? I used to listen to all those guys back in the day.
Yeah, that was my station, man. WNEW FM, when I was a young kid in New York and a teenager in New Jersey, that was my station. That was the place where my music taste was formed. One disc jockey in particular there that you didn't mention is named Vin Scelsa. And that's the guy that probably turned me on to most of the music that's behind my old bald head.
Yeah,
I have Vin Scelsa to thank for so much of my music taste all these years.
Well, it was always for me going back and forth to 92.3 K Rock and Q104.3 at back in the day.
Right.
But then you mentioned you went to then MTV and VH1. How did you land that gig?
Well, perfect question and a perfect segue, because
Yeah.
in the early days of MTV, a lot of the senior most executives were in radio before the launch of MTV. So, like in any industry, there's a gang, there's a club, there's only so many people that work on radio stations, and many of us ended up getting to know each other. So I was lucky enough to be pulled into MTV by a friend from my radio days before it. And as I said, that led to a long and happy life at that company when they were all music. I worked there almost a dozen years at both MTV and VH1.
And then you were president of programming at CBS Radio. Was that a step above the program director, or was that just programming?
Well, essentially, the 200 some odd program directors reported into what we called format captains, because we had news, talk, sports, music in every genre. And then those format captains reported into me. So I was the lead guy for the programming, the content, and the talent at all of their radio stations. Back during that run, there were about 200 stations back then.
Right. Well, certainly radio is not what it was, now that it was back then, right? But then let's fast forward to 2018. You founded Rob Barnett Media. What made you become or wanted to become a headhunter?
The God's honest truth, Brian, is it was an accident. I had a job at Audible in 2017, the audio book innovators that are owned by Amazon. I was working there thinking it was going great. And then one day I got that, "Can you come talk to us for a minute?" wave by Human Resources.
Oh, yeah.
I got restructured, downsized, job eliminated. Brian, it's nothing personal. It's just business.
Right.
And shown the door. So in the beginning of 2018, I started sending out resumes and getting really scared and frustrated, sad, mad, and nothing good. And I started making, like you're doing now, a short daily video just about every morning, talking about my predicament, saying to people, look, if you're stuck out of work, let's at least try to help each other. And after a whole bunch of videos the first few weeks, a guy reached out and said, "So I'm watching the videos. They're great. I met you at MTV back in the day. Are you a headhunter? Is that what this is?" And there was no Zoom, so he didn't see my face when he asked that question. I just leaned into the phone. And when he said, "Are you a headhunter?" I said, "Yes." And then that's how it started. And, I realized quickly that I could re-engineer my brain, take that huge list of business contacts I had from radio, television, film, video, music, comedy, documentary, and really just use all of my contacts in this one singular way, which was helping companies find the pros and helping the pros find the right people at the companies and getting them to dance together. That became my job 2018.
And you just recently launched nextjobbestjob.com.
Yeah, we felt, and just about every job seeker agrees, that the antiquated world of job postings has a lot of problems with it at LinkedIn, Indeed, ZipRecruiter, and all these other sites that do it. Yeah. We wanted to invest a lot of money, some smart technology, and a great team of media pros to build a new kind of job search platform. So under the same name as the book, plug, nextjobbestjob.com is filtering all the shit that's out there to bring in the very best new jobs for media people in every shape and size every single day. And that's the purpose of nextjobbestjob.com, to save people the time from having to look at all these other sites and trust that there are media people here hand selecting the very best jobs every day that we offer people to take a look at.
Yeah, I mean, the job market today is completely broken. And no matter how you look at it, from applying to interviewing, you name it, which is a perfect segue into the last thing I wanted to talk about, the subject that I believe that the most common issue and the most frustrating issue among job seekers today is the subject on ghosting. I saw your video with the white sheet over your head, and I tell you, I mean, it mind boggles me when you send out emails and you see that people are opening them 20 times, 30 times, but no responses. Now, you have to, when you open up an email, you're either curious, interested, or half curious. I don't open up an email if I'm not interested or curious. So these people are interested or curious, but you scratch in and say to yourself, why is there's not any responses, not even thanks, but we're not hiring or whatever. And for me, I just feel like, I'm sure you are experiencing with your clients today, is, how do we get over that sort of hump, in the sense of, we're job seekers. We're not selling some, of course we're selling ourselves, but we're not selling a product or service. This is people that are actually interested in working for you, your company. Let's give us a break here, right? What is your thoughts?
Well, truthfully, I wrote that book to try to answer that problem, because being ghosted is painful and can, not to get too heavy, be life-threatening for friends of mine and clients I've worked with. You have to attack this problem in as many specific ways as possible. First, figuring out how to control your own feelings, which is a big piece of that puzzle. But then second, coming up with as many practical steps as possible to increase your response rate. So we put a lot of that in the book, and then I work every single day with people in one-on-one sessions to help them have a LinkedIn that's more effective, a resume that's more effective, to write cover letters that are radically different than the cover letter that 99% of the people write. And then lastly, how to get way beyond this idea of just pushing an apply button on a website, because most people will tell you that the jobs that we've gotten after all these years as professionals happen because somebody that knows us and trusts us made an introduction to somebody at that company that got us to the hiring exec. That's got to be the process. But just pressing buttons and waiting is a little bit like buying lottery tickets. It's not enough. So we're trying to work with people to make sure that there's a more systematic approach to this whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think 99% of the positions that I had have all been through cold outreach. Applying and going through that black hole of applying online and LinkedIn, all that stuff, it's a dead end. Unless you check all the boxes, right? You have to have the bachelor's degree. You have to have X amount of experience, blah, blah, all this other stuff that you need to be a perfect candidate in order to actually get accepted online. But as a cold outreach, you become more humanized, right? You're not a robotic application. You are now someone that's a human to human process versus that other way that everybody else is doing through LinkedIn and what you just said. So let's talk about what your number one tip is for job seekers in today's hiring process.
Well, there's certainly a hell of a lot more than one, but for me, if I'm just going to answer that with one thing, the most common problem I see is that on LinkedIn, under that photo, your profile photo, and under your name, most people have what I call word salad. I'm a leader, I'm a marketer, I'm a professional, I'm proven, I'm experienced, I'm sales, I'm content. That's not how hiring people think, whether you're a headhunter like me or whether you're a hiring executive at a company. When we have an opening for something called a growth marketer, this index finger is on LinkedIn moving at 1,000 miles an hour. So the one tip I give everyone is to make sure that if you're looking for work, The word or words, fewest words you choose under your photo are your North Star, and it needs to be crystal clear. For me, it just says Headhunter. So I'm trying to encourage everybody to realize that if you're looking for work, you've got to tell us who you are with a job title. I joke in the book, are you a butcher, a baker, or a candlestick maker?
Yeah.
It can't really be all three, because the bakery's going to only be interested in one of those guys.
Right. Well, what about if you're a business development, right? You don't want to just put business development. I think you should be able to put what you specialize in. Is it Fortune 500s that you work with? So then it gives a little bit more, you'd be more, a little more articulated to the headhunter, and just saying, I'm a sales. Everybody does sales. Everybody is a BDR. Everybody's an appointment setter, a lead gen. But how do you separate yourself from just saying, hey, I'm a salesperson, or
I would agree with that. Right. You might need an adjective or two or a category, but again, if you're asking me to talk about just one piece of job seeking advice, it's to get this North Star tight as it can possibly be.
Rob, always a pleasure to speak with you, talk with you. Where could people find more about you and your services?
Well, we now have 2 home bases. So nextjobbestjob.com and robbarnettmedia.com. That's where we've got all the different ways that can help folks that are on the search. And thanks for asking me to do this.
Always a pleasure, Rob. Thanks for your time today.
See ya.
Take care.